Your physical body is rapidly accelerating toward a devastating emotional crash. Your throat tightens. The toxic words are already forming on your tongue. You are completely self-aware of the massive destruction you're about to cause, yet you are entirely paralyzed. You are screaming internally to hit the brakes, but your consciousness has been violently shoved into the passenger seat of your own anatomy. Society casually labels this a panic attack or a simple loss of emotional control. Therapists might call it a triggering event. They are completely blind to the terrifying neurological reality. You are not losing your mind. You are currently being held hostage by a highly aggressive biological hijack. The moment a severe negative emotion floods your bloodstream, your primal brain physically welds your identity to the trauma. In this video, I will expose the shocking anatomy of this emotional death spiral. I will teach you how to manually trigger a hidden neuroanatomical escape hatch known as God mode. We are going to permanently install an emergency eject seat in your mind, allowing you to instantly sever the connection between your awareness and your panic. You have been endlessly brainwashed by the modern mindfulness industry into believing a highly dangerous psychological myth. When a negative emotional spiral hits, therapists and wellness gurus preach the soft, comforting gospel of radical acceptance. They confidently instruct you to stay completely present in the moment, to take a deep breath, and to bravely feel your feelings. You sit in your room, desperately trying to mentally process the crushing wave of anxiety or the blinding flash of rage, convinced that acknowledging the emotion will somehow magically diffuse it. You deeply believe that if you just analyze the pain hard enough, you will regain control of your spiraling body. Wrong. That is the most destructive, biologically ignorant advice ever handed to a human being experiencing an acute limbic hijack. What modern psychology politely labels as emotional processing, neuroscience brutally classifies as active chemical torture. Let me completely dismantle this dangerous illusion for you right now. When your nervous system is actively flooding your brain with a lethal cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline, sitting quietly to observe your feelings is exactly like locking yourself inside a burning building to mindfully analyze the temperature of the flames. You're not healing. You're forcefully keeping your fragile prefrontal cortex submerged in a highly toxic, corrosive biological acid. The absolute worst thing you can possibly do during a severe emotional crash is to stay deeply connected to your physical body. The wellness industry told you that disconnecting from your emotions is a harmful trauma response, a cowardly escape from reality. But they are completely blind to the raw mechanical limits of your anatomical hardware. They fundamentally misunderstand a terrifying neurological phenomenon called cognitive fusion. During a crisis, your brain physically welds your core identity to the fleeting emotion. It creates a powerful, flawless illusion that you do not just feel the anger, but that you are the anger itself. It tricks you into believing that the crushing anxiety is your permanent reality rather than a temporary chemical weather system passing through your veins. Trying to meditate your way out of cognitive fusion is a futile, exhausting battle against your own biochemistry. You do not need to process your rage in real time, and you certainly do not need to breathe through a panic attack. You're fighting a ruthless, physical, electrical fire that standard talk therapy cannot extinguish. We must immediately drop these useless behavioral theories. The overwhelming urge you feel to mentally check out during a severe conflict is not a sign of emotional immaturity. It is a highly sophisticated preventative defense mechanism. Your autonomic nervous system is begging you to activate the emergency eject seat before the central processing unit melts down completely. The psychological advice officially ends right here. Now, we must forcefully enter the microscopic laboratory of your own anatomy to witness the horrifying architectural fusion happening right now. Forget your deep emotional wounds, erase your spiritual journey. We are plunging directly into the electrical wiring of your default mode network. Look at the neuroanatomy. Millisecond 0. A triggering social event occurs. A thick wave of cortisol floods the system. Millisecond 12. The amygdala detects what it calculates to be a lethal threat. It bypasses logic and sends a massive concentrated electrical surge directly into the default mode network. This is the exact anatomical region responsible for generating your entire sense of self. Millisecond 50, a horrifying biological short circuit happens. The raw emotion and your core identity are physically welded together in a violent neurochemical flash. By second 2, you no longer just feel the panic or the rage, you absolutely become the panic. The chemical fire rapidly spreads across the synapses. The central control room is completely hijacked. Society casually calls this an emotional meltdown. Science calls it catastrophic cognitive fusion. Your nervous system is not broken or weak. It is executing a flawless, desperate survival lock. The sheer crushing volume of toxic adrenaline actively forces your brain to trap your awareness inside the burning physical body. That devastating, humiliating inability to stop yourself from screaming or crying is nothing but a mechanical biological quarantine. The autonomic system actively severs the vital connection to your prefrontal cortex. You cannot outthink this. You cannot negotiate with a burning neural pathway. You cannot override the brutal laws of cellular fusion with a simple, trendy breathing exercise. Look at this scan. The identity centers are burning a furious, toxic red, while the logical command center remains completely dark and unresponsive. Your biology is operating perfectly based on its ancient design. It is forcing you to entirely internalize the threat. But within this exact anatomical disaster lies a hidden mechanical switch, a physiological escape hatch. When you manually force your brain to observe the situation from a distant, third-person perspective, you trigger an immediate network decoupling. You actively sever the physical electrical cord connecting the terrified amygdala to your identity center. The fusion violently breaks apart. The chemical fire instantly loses its oxygen supply. You literally step out of the burning vehicle while the crash is still actively happening. You are entirely innocent of the initial mechanical hijack. But this aggressive, deeply terrifying fusion mechanism did not just randomly materialize out of thin air today. The ancient software running this violent emotional lock was absolutely not written for a modern argument with your spouse or a stressful day at the office. To understand why your cellular structure aggressively demands that your soul remains trapped inside a suffering body, we have to immediately leave this room. We must aggressively pull the camera back, rip through the sterile drywall of your modern psychology clinic, and stare directly into the cold, unforgiving darkness of our brutal evolutionary survival and the bloody, ancient birth of the observer self. Let us completely shatter the microscopic lens, ripping the camera out of your fused neural pathways, tearing through the sterile walls of the modern therapy room, and aggressively rewinding the evolutionary clock by 200,000 years. Welcome to the brutal, blood-soaked reality of the primal wilderness. Here, physical pain is not an abstract concept. It is a lethal, tearing reality. Imagine our ancient ancestor pinned down by a massive predator. The physical trauma is absolute and unbearable. In these horrific, terminal moments, the brain cannot fight. It cannot run. It has only one ultimate majestic defense mechanism left to deploy. It activates the biological eject seat. The nervous system executes a flawless dissociation protocol. It violently severs the connection between the experiencing body and the observing consciousness. The mind literally floats above the tearing flesh, protecting the core soul from the agonizing reality of being consumed alive. This extreme detachment is not a mental illness. It is the most merciful, highly advanced survival, mercy, ever engineered by evolution. It is the pristine, deeply ingrained spatial rhythm of the observer self etched permanently into the core of your DNA. Now, violently snap the pendulum back to the present moment. Look at the agonizing psychological reality of your daily existence. You are a biological apex survivor sitting completely safe in a climate-controlled room, experiencing a severe emotional argument with a colleague, being violently forced by society to stay completely grounded inside a burning body. The mismatch is an absolute evolutionary catastrophe. Modern psychological civilization, with its endless mindfulness culture and emotional awareness trends, demands that you actively feel every single agonizing second of your internal panic. The wellness industry has completely pathologized your greatest evolutionary weapon, labeling your natural instinct to detach as a cowardly, toxic avoidance strategy. You are a primal survivor violently forced into a lifestyle of unbearable emotional exposure. Your brain is desperately screaming to pull the eject lever to let your consciousness float safely above the chaotic chemical fire of the argument. But all it gets is a societal mandate to breathe deeply and burn alive. How could you possibly adapt to this emotional nightmare? You deeply believe you're a terrible, broken person for suddenly feeling completely numb and disconnected during a massive fight with your spouse. But you are bringing a primitive, highly specialized survival escape pod to a hostile, hyper-analyzed cage of modern convenience. You're not fighting your own emotional immaturity. You are fighting the crushing structural design of the 21st century that has rendered your biological mercy mechanism utterly unacceptable. The heavy guilt you feel when you automatically zone out during a panic attack is not a sign of moral decay. It is the brilliant, desperate rebellion of a primal organism trying to artificially simulate the safe, detached stratosphere it was violently robbed of. You are completely innocent of this mechanical withdrawal. The overwhelming urge to exit your own body every single time you suffer is not a personal weakness. It is the majestic, tragic crash of an ancient biological operating system buckling under the crushing, suffocating weight of an overly emotional era it fundamentally cannot comprehend. You are carrying the heavy, unspoken burden of an entire lineage of survivors forced to live as exposed, raw nerves without a single moment of authentic, detached peace. But now, let the grand historical timeline slowly dissolve. Stop the ticking of the evolutionary clock. Silence the deafening roar of the primal predators. Let the camera fall back down from the cold cosmos, descending quietly through the ceiling, returning to the absolute physical stillness of your room. The history of human dissociation has finally finished its defense. The evolutionary data has delivered its unshakable verdict. The science simply no longer matters in this quiet space. The crushing weight of emotional mindfulness slowly fades away. Listen to the absolute stillness of your own consciousness. Notice the faint shadows dancing on the quiet walls. Feel the gentle rhythmic rise and fall of your chest as your lungs expand and collapse. You do not need to analyze your default mode network or track your adrenaline spikes anymore. You do not need to understand the vast, invisible evolutionary mercy mechanisms that govern the survival instincts of your genetic lineage. All of that immense, crushing structural noise ends right here, at the physical edge of your own awareness. For years, you have violently forced yourself to stay trapped inside a burning physical body during every single emotional crisis. You deeply believed that actively feeling every agonizing wave of panic was the ultimate mark of psychological maturity. You sincerely thought your sudden, overwhelming desire to completely detach and float away from your own physical sensations was a shameful sign that you were fundamentally broken or cowardly. Let that incredibly heavy, rusted armor of emotional confrontation fall to the floor right now. You're not a mechanical device built to continuously endure the toxic chemical fires of your nervous system. You're just a fragile, beautiful biological organism that desperately needs the permission to pull the emergency eject lever. The relentless pursuit of absolute emotional presence is nothing but a cruel neurological illusion. You have the undeniable existential right to be completely disconnected in this delicate moment of crisis. God mode is precisely this. It is the brave act of sitting in total silence, activating the cognitive eject seat, and formally submitting your resignation letter from the exhausting role of the suffering victim. In this quiet, zero-gravity space, you're not running away from your problems. You're not repressing your trauma. You're simply allowing your core identity to step completely outside of the blazing chemical inferno. You are actively giving your brain the freedom it was violently robbed of by modern therapeutic standards. By quietly reclaiming this tiny fraction of absolute detachment, you are not being weak. You are actively performing the most profound act of human preservation against a massive system meticulously designed to consume your authentic peace. You are bravely choosing to let your own consciousness rest in a state of native clarity, bathed in the quiet dignity of simply observing the fire from a safe, untouchable distance. Your innate intelligence, your deep emotional energy, and your inner peace are permanently restored, not by adding more complicated processing techniques, but by deeply honoring the profound, healing emptiness of your own non-identification. The biology has finally spoken, and the clear path to your existential liberation has been laid out in the quiet darkness of your own head. The heavy, invisible prison door of emotional fusion is already standing wide open. The only remaining question is what you will quietly choose to do when the shadows fade and reality inevitably demands your attention again. Tomorrow, when you face a high-pressure crisis, will you surrender your fragile mind back to the crushing weight of the burning vehicle? Or will you fiercely protect the quiet sanctuary of your own divine observation? You have successfully activated God mode. The chemical fire is officially extinguished. You are now free to navigate your waking life with the cold, detached precision of an untouchable observer. But do not let this powerful cognitive shield deceive your biological logic. The eject seat protects you from real, immediate threats. Yet a much darker, far more insidious psychological machine is quietly spinning up in the background. What happens when there's absolutely no crisis to escape from? The next time you're driving on an empty highway or standing under a warm shower, watch in horror as your brain automatically begins to manufacture devastating tragedies, fake arguments, and scenarios of profound betrayal that have never actually happened. Society calls this maladaptive daydreaming and tells you it is toxic psychological garbage. You are standing at a profoundly critical crossroads right now. Will you bravely maintain your quiet observation today? Or will you silently allow your nervous system to trap you inside these exhausting artificial nightmares tomorrow? Leave your exact choice in the comments below. Write your definitive decision down to make it a binding physical contract with your own recovering mind. You have survived the emotional death spiral of the present moment. But the shocking biological truth about why your brain hallucinates these dark scenarios and the precise mechanical hack to weaponize those negative daydreams into a high-stakes simulation tool for rapid skill acquisition will be completely dismantled for you in the next video.